Today we're going to edit a couple images of the lovely Averie, which I photographed when I was teaching the workshop out there in Midland, Texas. The first one here, she has a little bit of a vampire look. The first one here we're going to go through and we're going to do a complete retouch on her first, but we're also going to add in a simple background replacement on this image. Now first off, we're going to do a little bit of a cleanup on her face a little bit. There's a couple minor blemishes here we're going to go in and fix up. As a vampire, we don't necessarily want to have blemishes on her face at all. So we're just going to take the spot healing brush, not the eraser brush, spot healing brush. And we're just going to come in here and clean up a few of these little blemishes that she's got happening around here. Just selecting with the spot healer. And then second, we're going to use Nik Color Effects for a dynamic skin softener filter on the Nik Color Effects to also clean up the skin just a little bit more and get a little bit of a polished look on it. This will take away a lot of the little details, which we'll see after I click OK and it goes through and sets everything up. And that's just the skin softener, just as the defaults are on the skin softener. I just chose the color of her face for what we wanted it to be closest to, and it just did a minor cleanup. You can look and see the difference between there and there. It's not a lot of difference yet in what it did for her face. That's fine. We don't want it to do anything really dramatic yet. Okay, we're going to zoom back out. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to crop this down to an 8:10 ratio, and I'm doing that because Instagram allows us to have an 8:10, but doesn't allow us to have that 2:3 ratio that comes out of our comes out of our cameras. So that looks pretty good. We got a good crop on it now. I think we're ready to go for the next stage. Now we're just going to do a simple background replacement. So the first step I'm going to do for a simple background replacement is I'm going to use Topaz Labs Remask to go through this. And I have a Remask demo on my YouTube channel that you can go find. It'll show you how to do all this stuff, but I'm going to speed through it here and not explain how I'm doing all this along the way. All right, we've done the edit on it, and it doesn't have to be a perfect cutout for her. I'm going to turn these layers off so you can see what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be a perfect cutout for this because of the way we're going to blend these two layers together. We're going to turn that one back on. So we still have our background layer there, and we have our cutout of her on the top layer. So now I'm going to take another image, and I'm going to drop it in between those two layers. And I'm going to size it in here. It automatically comes in as a free transform, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to size it into the size I want it to be to get the composition to where I want it to be. I don't want the top of the arch to cut through her head, so I'm going to pull it up just a little higher here and out just a little bit, widen the door. Bring the arch up all the way to the top of the image here. We'll click OK. Get that back to screen so we can see what it's doing. So already we look pretty good. But we're going to change that blending mode for that layer. We're going to change it now to screen. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer. And I'm going to change that blending mode to multiply. Now I did that because screen plus multiply is pretty much the same as normal, with some exceptions of letting a few things from this background layer show through all the transparency. So I'm going to change the opacity of the multiply layer down just a little bit because I want it to be a little bit lighter in color than it was. And I'm going to do the same thing with the screen mode, which will darken it again just a little bit. But that's also letting that dark background that was in the original image show through. But the biggest thing that it's doing is it's allowing these edges along her arms and in her hair here to show through also, so that we can see a blend with the background, so the background looks closer to accurate, closer to what you would expect to see. Now for finishing techniques, we're going to do the same thing we do for all the other ones. We're going to go to Color Effects, creating a duplicate layer of everything that we've seen so far. We're going to do color effects, and we're going to go in here to the recipes folder, and this is where some built-in I'm sorry, first we're going to use black gold. Black gold is a built-in recipe that we have, and we're just going to click OK, just like that's the default of that recipe. We're just going to keep it just like it is and use black gold. And what black gold is doing is it does that bit of a gold warm colorizing on it, and it also brings out some more of the details of our background and of our subject. We're going to turn that opacity way down though, because we don't want it quite that strong. That's a little too strong. So we're going to turn that opacity down to about 15%. Okay, 16% is close enough. Then we're going to run color effects again. And this time we're going to use a custom recipe, and this custom recipe is called Christy Eyes for me, named for a mentor that I had once before. And what it does is it does a dark contrasts with these settings that you see on the screen, and the opacity down to about 67%, and then it does a bleach bypass with those settings, and the opacity is at 29% for that one. And that just, it decolorizes a little bit, brings out a few of the details back into the dress, into the dark details of the image. We're going to click OK on that one as well, because that looked pretty good just like it is. Now we're going to adjust the lighting just a little bit, and we're going to do that by dropping in another layer on top of this, just this abstract gray cloud layer. We're just going to drop it in. We're going to size it to the size of our image, and then we're going to change that blending mode also to multiply. And now we're going to make a mask for that layer, and then we're going to take just a plain brush, white and black brush, on normal at about 20%, a black brush, and I'm going to paint back in where I want the details to be on this image. Size it up just a little bit, or where I want the light to be, I mean. So we're going to paint out just a little bit right along here on that side of the face to give ourselves a little bit of a lighting pattern. And you can use this method to get some fixes to lighting. If your lighting is too flat, you can use this to fix your lighting to a small extent. But it also is great because it allows you to do some dodging and burning. Now I'm going to bring in some light down here along the dress. I'm going to enhance some of the wrinkles that are here in the dress just by adding a little more light down here in these sections of the dress. And a little bit of the highlights in her hair here. Basically, I'm painting in everywhere where I would expect the light to be hitting if it was coming in from this side over here. Alright, now we're going to duplicate everything again. Paste it in as a new layer. Now I'm going to run to Topaz Labs Impression, and this is just an auto painter. You can also take at this stage to do painting on your own, but I'm just going to use an auto painter for this particular example. I'm going to go with this nice warm one. I'm going to turn the opacity down. Click OK. I'll duplicate that layer again. This time I'm going to run Topaz Labs Adjust, and this is just a detail extractor. There's nothing exciting that's happening here. It's just pulling out all the details. And you can use any detail enhancer. There's one in Color Effects. I just happen to use the one in Topaz Labs. And now I'm going to also mask that one. And I'm going to mask that one because I don't want that much detail in her face. So now I'm going to come back in with a white brush. And I'm going to paint back in where I want details to be, which is going to be in her hair. And in the dress for sure. And a little bit around the eyes and the lips. And then lastly, I'm going to run one more Knit Color Effects filter. Got to rasterize this layer first. Oops, sorry, rasterized. Okay, we're good. We're going to run Knit Color Effects one more time. We're going to run one more filter that I wrote. This one called, well, it's called Actor because I use it for my acting headshots. But all it's doing is doing a remove color cast with its default settings. It's doing a reflector effects of silver. Does a slight levels and curves adjustment. Although I think I'm going to actually want the dark areas to be a little brighter than that. I'm going to turn that level and curves off actually in this particular case. And then it does a darken, lighten, center. Darken, lighten, center will lighten wherever I place this centerpiece. Will lighten the center of it, and then it'll darken out from there. So I'm going to place the light center right about there. You see it brightened this area, and it started darkening everything else. I'm going to take that detail off right here in the bottom corner so that it's just normal peeking through there. And from that point, we would call this image done. For the next image, we're just going to do a simple background exchange on it. We're not going to do anything else fancy with any of the other filters on it. So we've got our basic headshot here of Averie. Going to crop it to 8x10. Going to do a quick cleanup of her face. Any little blemishes and such we're going to just take out with the spot healer first, and then we'll run color effects on it again to do a dynamic skin softener on it. Choosing the color. Click OK there. Looks really good. We're going to fit screen. Now you can use any cutout you want to do, but I like to use remask, so I'm going back to remask. Now she was photographed on a dark background because I knew that I was going to be placing a dark background behind her. But most of the time I'll shoot on underexposed gray. Click OK. I'm going to drag our new background so that it's in between those two layers. And we're going to use this background here. Do a free transform on it. Let's constrict. There we go. Free transform on it. Here, a nice woodsy scene. Slide it this way so those branches don't look like they're quite poking into her head. Click OK. This time, because she's so close to the camera and the background should be far away, I'm going to blur the background a little bit as well. Just going to use Gaussian blur. Set it to a reasonable level. Flatten that image so that I can use, or flatten that layer so I can use it a little bit. Alright, now I'm going to change, again, that layer to screen first. Then I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to change it to multiply. Turn down the multiply layer a little bit. Get a little brighter in the background. All right, now that we've got the backgrounds the way we want them to do, I'm noticing there's just a little problem up here at the top of her head where the cutout didn't really look that good. And I'm just going to take a straight eraser brush at this point, a destructive eraser brush with a soft edge. It has a very soft edge, hardness is 0, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to erase that top layer just a little bit so that some of that starts showing through better from the bottom layers. And if I erased all of this, you'd still see her through all those layers. So I'm just taking just that little bit up here at the top so we can still see her hair, so it looks like it's blending better through here. And it doesn't look quite so cut out. Now we're going to run color effects again. This time we're going to use the script called Actor Gold. And the only difference between the Actor and Actor Gold is that Actor Gold does a gold reflector effects instead of a silver one. And you'll see that when it comes up. Turn off that one first. So it does the remove color cast, reflector effects gold, does a levels and curves adjustment, and then the darken light and center, which I'm going to take the center and I'm going to place it right here on this one. And we're going to leave everything else just like it is and click OK. And this one I would call done. For the last one I'm going to do of Averie, we're going to do a little more complex of a edit on her. So first off, we have our image. We're not going to quite resize this one yet. I'm going to actually do the cutout on this one first, but we're going to be a lot more particular about the cutout this time because we're not going to do the blending with the background the same way I did it before. So this time we're going to go into remask and we're going to be a little more specific about what we're cutting out. And I'm cutting out the chair as well because I want to replace her chair. Alright, I have her cut out. I don't need that bottom layer anymore at all because of what I'm going to be doing next. Now I'm going to actually do my crop to make this a 8x10 style image. We're going to come in here, we're going to go image, we're going to canvas size, and we're going to make this 4,000 by 5,000 pixels. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make it 4,800 by 6,000 pixels. And now she looks like she's sitting in midair, but that's exactly what I want in this particular case, because I'm going to drop in a different chair. Made this nice blue chair. That needs to go behind her, of course. Free transform. We're going to get it just where we want it to be here. So it looks like she's sitting right here on the edge of the chair. I want it to be taller than it is. I think we're pretty close to where I want it to be. Yep, looks pretty good. All right. I'm going to change the color of that chair as well. I'm going to go and do that with a hue saturation slider. And I'm just going to take the hue up until I find a red, I think, is what I want. Somewhere right in here. Very red. We're going to pump the saturation up so it's even more red. And we're going to darken it just a little bit. And now she has a nice red throne to be sitting in. I'm going to flatten that layer just a little bit because I don't need all that extra stuff. I'm going to add a new layer and put it down here below the chair because the shadows aren't going to be quite right here. So I need to paint some shadowing in. I need to paint some black in over here on the chair. Got a black brush. You can set the opacity up to 100%. Need that to be between there. Got a black brush painting in here. And we're going to paint some shadow over here as well. Now that's the hard shadows. All right, come here, I'm going to make that just a little more opaque so we can see a little bit of what's going on behind that black. Now we're going to do another layer above that where I'm going to paint in a little more shadow of her where she'd be casting it on the arm of this chair here and on the back of the chair here. Not worried about that white halo yet. I'll deal with that white halo in a bit. Just want to bring this up here. I'm going to change that layer blending mode to multiply. Change the opacity on that layer in the wrong spot. I want to actually bring that down here. Change it to multiply. We're going to turn it down just a little bit. Now she looks like she's sitting in her chair where we want her to be. Now we need to put her into a setting as well. We're going to do that by adding in some walls and floors to this whole thing. We're going to go with a fairly simple wall first. We're going to drop this in behind everything. Free transform, I want the wall to be about there. Behind her. Perfect. I'm going to duplicate that wall. I'm going to transform. I need to transform it. Transform it to flip vertical. Actually, that's what I want to be my back wall, because I want the darker to be at the bottom. And now for this other one, I'm going to take it, do a free transform again. We're going to slide it down until it matches up with that wall. But that doesn't look right yet, right? So we're going to go in and we're going to do another transform on that piece. We're going to use the perspective And perspective will allow us to do this to it, to skew it so that it starts to look like an actual floor here. Now back to regular scale, and we're going to bring it in this way. And then back to perspective again to stretch it out a little bit more, to fix that last little bit I just did. Click OK. Everything sharpens up, and we have a floor underneath her. Now we need to add some shadowing to make that floor look realistic. The first one we're going to do is back here on this wall, where the wall meets the corner. And I'm going to fill that with black in a new layer. Fill that with black in a new layer. Deselect. And now I want to blur that. I want to blur it a lot, actually, in this particular case. This is just to give a shadow right at the base of the wall. Free transform to make sure it's actually extended well beyond the edges, so that it looks right at the edges. Now we're going to have to create what we call the contact shadow. This is where the chair meets the floor and where the cape meets the floor. So we just need to have another black. We're just going to draw it in. Just a bit of black. It needs to be 100%. Just a bit of black right here where it all meets the floor, where her foot meets the floor. This is just a bare edge of shadow. It doesn't really look like much, but without it there, it doesn't look right. Add one more layer. This time we're going to add more shadow. Now our light direction looks like it's coming in from this way, so we're going to add the shadow in here, and we're going to go underneath the chair. Go all the way back on the chair here. Brush. So the chair up on the wall. Going to blur that one also. We're going to change its blending mode to multiply, and we're going to change the opacity way down so that it starts to look like a real shadow. I want it to be a little lighter on the wall. Now I still want it to be a little darker on the floor down here, so I'm going to duplicate that layer. And then I'm going to take a destructive eraser brush and I'm going to erase parts of it on the wall so it's darker underneath the chair, but not necessarily over here on the wall part. So there we have her sitting in her little corner of the castle. That's it for our composition portions of this. Now we're going to run it through the same filters we were running through before. We're going to run through Nick Color Effects first. I'm going to take that black gold recipe, turn the opacity down on that just a little bit. Gonna run color effects again. Now each time it's running color effects, it's duplicating everything that was there, everything that was visible, into its own new layer, and then it's starting this process. This time we're going to go with Christy Eyes. Again, there's the dark contrast settings. And I'm going to try and save these recipes to my folder where you can get a hold of them also. And I'll have a link in the description for that. So that does that, and it does a bleach bypass. We're going to leave it just like that. Now, instead of doing the abstract layer that I did before, the next thing I'm going to do is run it through the auto paint. And I'm just going to do a bare hint of the painting this time. I'm not going to overdo the painting because I like it the way it looks right now. I like the way it's starting to look right now. So we're going to go through. We're going to run the painting filter on it. Let's duplicate the layer first. Run the painting filter on it. And you can choose any painting filter you want to make this work if you like whatever style you like to have added to it. Like I said, I'm not going to turn it on that strong. I'm going to bring it way down. I just want a hint of the painting. I don't want a lot of it. And now instead of going to Topaz Abstract or Adjust, I'm going to actually go back into Paint Shop Pro, or not Paint Shop Pro, sorry, into Color Effects. And I'm going to apply some of these one of these filters, but not the same way. I'm going to go hit this black gold filter again. This is going to pump up the details, but I'm going to turn off many of these other settings. I'm going to leave the levels and curves piece of it. And I'm going to leave the detail extractor. I'll turn off the reflector effects. And I think I'm going to leave that levels and curves like it is. Let's see what it does. Okay. We're going to click OK on that one. Now we're going to have to clean up some of that detail because that's a little too much. We're going to turn the opacity way down. It's a bit heavy-handed at the moment, but we're going to turn the opacity of it down. And then we'll run one more filter on it from Color Effects before doing our final retouch help on it. Yeah, that looks pretty good like it is. All right, now we're going to run Color Effects one more time. We're going to run with one of those actor recipes. Probably the regular one, not the gold one. Because she's a vampire, I want her to be a little bluer. No, I think we're going to actually go with the warm one. I'll put my center over here. I'm going to click OK. And now, the effects we've done along the way have made her legs look really, really rough. And a little bit around here on her chest as well look really, really rough. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here on with a mixer brush, and the mixer brush I use has these settings up here. And then we're just going to paint along the light lines to help with smoothing out some of the details that were created by this. That were brought out by the other filter. We don't want that level of detail. So we're just going to paint in along the light lines that are already there. We're going to paint back out some of that detail that's just a little too extreme in here. go for that nice bronze look of her legs without necessarily being so noisy and all the extra. And I'm just using a plain old smooth brush for this. And because this is a mixer brush, if I wanted to fix some of the color here, the color of that foot, for instance, I can come in here and say, give me this color here. We're going to paint it in with a regular brush first. That color. And now I'll go back to the mixer brush and I'll start mixing that color in. Some of the shadowing back on her foot so we don't lose the dimensionality of her foot. Here. Round small for her fingers. And just a little bit right in here to smooth up. This portion of her neck and chest. And now I'm going to take a mask on that as well. Back to a regular brush. And I'm going to paint out black. I'm going to paint out some of that to let some of the other detail from the previous layer show through in just a few of these areas, very lightly. That'll give me back some of the detail in her arms without being the heavy detail that was brought in. See, now I've got some of the hair back on her arm, some of the pores back for her skin, without being too heavy of a detail from that other filter. And at that point, we're going to call this image done.